as I understand from these calculations here on that sheet, they made certain assumptions such as the average travel of the vehicle is 40 miles per shift. They assumed 10 miles per gallon, and an assumed average fuel cost of $3.60 going forward, and the last contract period averaged $3.33 per gallon. And I understand that is due to the fact that we are exempt from some of the tax and fuel surcharges that the rest of us pay at the gas pump. So that's kind of where the numbers crunched. Before we submitted our bid, I know Sergeant Loiser and Chief Brooks, I had asked them to take a look at it. I was satisfied that we were not losing money on the old rate, but with the gas costs going up, it was warranted to raise. And the fact that the sheriff put in a bid at $34 kind of helped establish where we are in terms of the market and what this was worth. So I'm happy that we're able to keep it.
You got
Trustee,
a couple of questions and a comment. If I'm following along right, we talked about the car, specific car, 140,000 miles, but I don't think it really matters. They don't care what car patrols,
Right.
They're just paying us. So that car goes into the fleet, and one of our fleet does the work, right? So it's not a
Essentially, yeah,
specific.
but not always. I mean, it's had some mechanical, difficulty. It would be much easier if we had a vehicle that had a gas card, which could use one vehicle
Right.
and one, but we can't because it wasn't part of the contract. And that would be one thing to potentially look in the future, would be to have one particular vehicle that we could use only for that, for an 8-hour period, Sunday through Thursday, and then twice on Friday and Saturday. There's certain hours when we could use the gas card, but we don't have that option.
So the way we are, it doesn't really matter what car goes,
Right.
right? It's just what we have to do.
Yeah, we're paying, essentially they're paying per hour at $32.07.
All right, and I had a question, on page 9, there's a map on the end of what I have on the PDF, and this looks like Pleasantdale to me. I've never heard this area called the Grange Highlands. I was expecting to see a map of like the east of Acacia and Ashbrook, around the Highland School, so this map, I didn't know we were patrolling this area.
There is a section of Pleasantdale that is the Grand Highland. It's called unincorporated Cook County. Just like all the way up to 90th Street, there are portions all the way up there that are unincorporated Cook County.
But I thought we were patrolling around the Highlands and around
Oh, yeah.
Acacia Acres,
You're
and this
saying that's
map
wrong?
does not cover that, so
Okay.
I think we're missing part of Exhibit A, if this is the only page that we have. And then my comment is, I agree with Amy's point. I understand why we are in this situation, but, make a note, and John, I guess we'll look at you for the next contract, getting
Yeah.
something like that.
Sure.
And I think it's never too early to start that discussion, right, because we got, 2 years or something?
Right.
So,
And I think the important thing, what I've kind of gleaned from it in going to a couple of meetings with the mayor, with Sergeant Loiser, meeting with the people at the Grange Highlands, is that we're very appreciative of the Indian Head Park Police Department patrolling these areas. They've had nothing but positive feedback, both to me and to the mayor and to Sergeant Loiser. And this reciprocal in public safety for having our police department in Indian Head Park with maybe, possibly 2 officers per shift, and we have 1 officer on hire back, it's somewhat of a public safety, wherein there's been situations I've been made aware of where our officers are in Indian Head Park for the village on an assignment, and a call comes into Indian Head Park, and they can kind of come into our village and assist if necessary. That's happened several times in my 6 weeks since being here, where they've maybe mentioned that, or they need assistance. There's 1 officer in the Grange Highlands patrolling the entire geographic area. They may need a backup for a domestic disturbance, and so we will float on over there to assist them because there's 1 officer. So it's a good thing that we do have this ability, because it is a little reciprocal with manpower, and I think it makes sense. But in the future, we'll look at the gasoline consumption and the use of the vehicle and things like that. It's a good point.
any other trustees?
can we get an answer on the map at some point, John?
Sure, I can get a more detailed
Thank you.
map, which will include all the areas.
I'm curious too, because it's, the captioning on it says Police Patrol Map, Lyons Township South, implies that there could be another
Area.
section to it. That was not provided. Okay, hearing nothing further, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the ordinance and contract with Police Patrol for the period of May 1st, 2014 through April 30th, 2016 between the Village of Indian Head Park and the Township of Lyons by the Indian Head Park Police Department. Moved by Trustee Schnaffer, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Wittenberg, roll call please.
Trustee Schnaufer.
Yes.
Trustee Wittenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Bailey.
Yes.
Trustee Walsh.
Yes.
Trustee Henshaw.
Yes.
Trustee O'Loughlin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. The next item of business is consideration of an ordinance amending sections of Title II Administrative/Personnel and adding a chapter regarding purchasing. So, I need to read the whole.
Yeah, you probably
Okay. All right, we'll read the whole title. This would be ordinance number 2014-10, an ordinance amending Title II entitled Administration and Personnel of the Indian Head Park Municipal Code by amending Section 2.08.040 entitled Powers and Duties of Chapter 2.08 entitled Village Administrator and adding Chapter 2.70 entitled Purchasing. This is, for short, referred to as Purchases Ordinance. Was presented, was on the agenda last time, and Trustee Walsh, thank you, asked for it to be tabled so we could look at it, and also I recall that we directed Chief Brooks, as Administrator Brooks, to look into this with the surrounding communities, so were you able to do that?
Yes.
What have you found?
Yes, in reviewing the, what many communities, municipalities are doing, I've done some research and I just, picked a handful of municipalities and found exactly where they stand in the procurement arena with regard to procurement procedures, competitive bidding, invitation, notices, awards, things of that nature. And generally, what I found is it's somewhat varied. However, I checked with Brookfield. Their threshold is 20,000. I checked with LaGrange Park, 20,000. LaGrange is at 10,000. And when I spoke with the assistant village manager of LaGrange, they are at, they increased it in 1997 from 5,000 to 10,000. When I checked with the village of Hinsdale assistant village manager, Darrell Langos, they are at $10,000. However, they're in the process of changing it to $20,000, and there's a 75% chance within the next 90 days they're going to be issuing an ordinance to push it to $20,000. So we have somewhat of a very, group of individuals. I checked some other, villages and municipalities. Some of them are at $20,000 with home rule. But the thing that I find is that we don't have that many purchases that would fall into the realm of always getting competitive bids. Most of the purchases, generally with a few exceptions, they're relatively small. However, when they do get large, there has to be a threshold to, we get competitive bids. And, in my conversations with some of the municipalities, the ones that are at 10, I wish are at 20, and it's the burden of having a budget administrative staff to look for quotations. So if you have to, let's just say you're going to purchase 10 fire hydrants, and it's $10,000. You're going to have to go to get multiple quotes, get an abstract of offers, and put that together, and that's going to tax the staff to be doing that. Or in this case, it would be me. So just in reviewing some of this and looking at the procedures for some of the municipalities, I think $20,000 is adequate for us to keep it at that range, because we don't have that many procurements that fall outside that range. So I believe that that is a good number, and the villages that are at 10 are at least expressing to me that they wish it was 20, and they're working towards to get to 20. And that's what my research has shown.
And what we're talking about here is right now, anytime the village would have to make a purchase that would exceed $20,000, we'd go out for competitive bid. Prior to that point, the village administrator, acting on behalf of the village and in the village's best interest, is able to authorize the purchase for a lesser amount. Our prior chief and administrator, Frank Alonso, had mentioned, this, in general discussion had come up that he didn't believe it was necessary because it typically happens only a handful of times per year that we're spending more than $20,000. Hopefully with the improving economy, and if the village gets more revenue to spend on something, we can do some bigger ticket items more frequently. I do recall this winter that we didn't act quickly in a situation where we all know how bad the winter was, how much snow was out there, and it used up a lot of salt, and we had to act to, and did act, because we didn't have a lesser threshold to purchase 200 tons of salt at $75 a ton, $15,000 purchase. So if we had a lesser amount, we would have had, of course, to have bought lesser salt, and 200 tons would not have been enough anyway. There were other things that happened after that that caused us, I think that was through the state. Ed, was
Yes.
that was through the state purchasing, but that was the higher price than what the original, I shouldn't say the original, but the regular contract part was. This was extra.
That's correct.
And then by the time they were able to, and we reacted quickly, and by the time they were able to deliver the salt, they used it for other purposes.
The state of Illinois took it over.
And so we had to go, and so we had to go on the market, and we paid $170 a ton.
$175 a ton.
So, in any event, that's an example, and yes, you can exempt emergency purposes, and then you have to define all what constitutes an emergency, and the best thing I can say is, depends on the circumstances, what it is and what it is not. I am not in favor of a purchases ordinance. I don't think we need it. We do have an ordinance, in fact, the most recent was 2008 ordinance number 6, where we increased it from 10 to 20,000, because at that time, the state of Illinois passed a law that allowed us to do that. So the state recognized that the lower number was not working and allowed communities like ours to be able to raise it. Our village code contains provisions for what the administrator can do and can't do, and one of them is he can't commit to, for example, buying a police car, which will be 20-some thousand, maybe $30,000, unless we go out to bid. The ordinance before us would put requirements on getting verbal quotes if it's between $1,000 and $10,000, written quotes between 10 and 20, and going out to bid. And I'm against it, but if the board wants to go forward with this, then my recommendation is that the board be prepared to put into the budget salary for an employee for the front office to help keep up with the paperwork. The staff is getting busier as days go by. We are busy because of FOIA requests. We are busy because of the street bond right now, the things going on. Building is picking up. The staff works hard to try to stay up with what they have in front of them to add this layer. Yeah, ultimately, John, I disagree, it'll fall to you through the staff to keep track of all these things. And for the fact that we're concerned that 4 or 5 times we go over 20,000 to make a purchase, it's worked fine. If it turns out the village administrator is mismanaging purchases less than 20,000, you don't need an ordinance that says you gotta go out to bid over 20,000 or not. If you call them in and talk to them and say, don't do that anymore, and if he continues to do it, buy an administrator. It's a simple thing. So that's part of the reasons why I'm against this, but in any event, I will open it up to the trustees.
So are you suggesting then that everything that you gave us in the 2.70 then is, we wouldn't consider then, you're saying? Is that your idea?
No, I'm saying that this purchase, the ordinance that amends Title II, that we don't need that. What's still in there would stand.
Right, but I'm looking at from last meeting, you excuse me for 1 second, because I'm just going back to what we looked at last month that we tabled. We're looking at that and the additions to that, right? And most of the additions to that ordinance were the section on all the purchases section. So that included all of the procedures that you just spoke of. Correct? Am I missing something here?
I'm not sure if
I
I'm
have-
following what you're talking about. What I'm saying is I'm opposed to the ordinance amending
Okay.
what we already have in place to require those items, like 3 verbal quotes under 10,000, 3 written quotes 10 to 20, and all the items under.
2.70, which
Yeah.
defined all of those. So, you know, my feeling is, John, I appreciate your research on this topic. Maybe what we put in that ordinance draft was too restrictive. I understand some of the things that are going on with the yin and the yang of a purchasing agreement. I know villages that have a $5,000. So, I mean, we could have examples of both sides all night talking about purchasing agreement. I feel that it's important to have in an ordinance, it doesn't have to be this particular language, and I would look to talking to John about this in more detail. So I would make a motion to table this again, because I would like to have some type of structured definition of how we're gonna handle procurement. I'm not saying it has to be something unreasonable, or something that ties everybody's hands, or causes us to hire new administration to do all of this. I'm saying there's ways that we can have a procurement structure so that we don't have services going on for many, many years, not going out for bid. And that's all we're trying to do here, is to create the guardrails around making sure we have competitive pricing for services rendered to the village. And I'm not suggesting we don't, I'm just saying that I think there needs to be some guardrails established, not to inflict undue administrative burden on any of the people here. So I would like to work with the village manager, if that is okay, to talk about that in more detail. Because I am not saying it has to be the 2.70. You know, there's so many exemptions in 2.70040 that you put in here, we might as well not even have it, because there's everything's exempted, which I don't agree with. So, you know, I think there's gotta be a happy medium that we can come to some agreement on this. I know there's people on the board that feel both sides of it. So if I'd like to make a motion to table.
I'm sure we have a motion to approve that.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Can I ask,
can I ask,
Sean,
you should probably have a motion second to approve before you have discussion.
oh, I'm sorry.
all right, I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2014-10.
When do we do comments? Is that it for comments?
No, you do the motion second, then you do discussion, and then if there's a motion to table, you do it at that time,
Yeah.
discussion.
So I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2014-10. Moved by trustee Schnaufer, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Trustee Hinshaw, you had a question?
Yes, on page 10, in section 6E, is what I think we were talking about. At the end of that 6E, there's a sentence that says, when the contract exceeds $20,000, the award shall be made by the Board of Trustees. And my recollection of our discussions is we had started talking out about maybe a $5,000 that the board would approve, and I remember discussion that maybe that was too low, and then we talked about 10,000. So I appreciate all the other stuff about the bids, the oral, the written, I think that's what we were talking about
Yes.
at the end of 6E. And so I'm not sure, I don't remember the discussions about the, right up above that, section 1, small purchases in excess of $1,000, $10,000. You know, I don't remember all that, not to say it didn't happen. But to me, the end of 6E is what I would like us to get to 10,000. I'm not so concerned about sections 1 and 2, about the oral and written.
Trustee, can I ask you where you are? Because I'm looking at a page 10 with the item number 6. It says award. You keep referring to something 6E like Echo. I can't find that.
I don't,
It's on page 10.
I'm on
it's a
page
little
10.
10 on the bottom of the, you know, the Word document.
It's the very next section, cooperative purchasing, letter C.
No,
Okay, then I'm not sure where you are.
well,
Yeah, so go
then,
to C, then just go, keep going down. So D, it would be D, then it goes D3, then D.
I think the next page from where you were. So you see the E in the last sentence on E? Not yet?
Thank you. Right here. Such purchase.
So anyway, going back, summarizing, you know, I thought that we had talked in this group about maybe $10,000, so I was surprised to see that still at 20, and then the other stuff was new to me, and I don't remember discussing that. Again, not saying we didn't talk about it, I just don't remember.
And that's why my recommendation is we need more discussion.
Rich, I don't know if you're with me yet or not.
I still have yet to find something that is 6E.
It's 2.70.050, procurement procedures.
Okay,
And then if you go down, there's A, B,
right?
C, and then D is small purchases.
Okay,
And then right below that is E,
right,
sole source procurement.
yes,
And it's the last sentence on that E
okay.
that says,
I thought you kept referring to it as 6E. And that was, I found it, don't waste your time looking at it.
Okay.
I see where you're talking now, thank you.
yeah, I'm not a lawyer, I think it is 6.
You're under sole source procurement.
Yes,
Okay.
and I'm okay with tabling this to continue discussion, but again, that's where I think we
Yeah,
have
because
talked
there's certain
about.
parts of this, I think, that are overzealous, what we need to, right? So I think we have to have a little meeting of the minds, and maybe we can do some of that work and represent it, and have a more fruitful discussion about it.
Well, there's been any other comments by the trustees? Okay, hearing none, then, well, we have a motion and a second, so, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Schnapper.
What are we voting on, Mr. Mayor?
We're voting on, approval of this ordinance as it's presented, unless we have a motion to table.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to table and a second for further discussion.
Council, if we table it, does it have to be on the agenda next week?
Yes, it just keeps carrying over.
Okay, okay, fine. Do everybody understand that? It tables, it goes to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Motion to table was by trustee Wittenberg. Is there a second? Trustee O'Loughlin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion, opinion chair, motion passes, and the matter is tabled for the next meeting. The next item is a discussion regarding update on the Indian Head Park electric aggregation program, and you recognize council on that to give us an update. Just briefly, at the meeting in April, we had received a bid from Constellation Energy, and actually, it was an offer to extend the agreement we had with Constellation Energy, whom you all know we have had for the last year under our electric aggregation ordinance, and we were paying 4.899 cents per kilowatt hour. The energy market has fluctuated and gone up, and a month ago, Commonwealth Edison hadn't announced their rate, and we all know hopefully we all know that what they had just came out with the other day. Anyway, the offer we had was to pay 7.19 cents per kilowatt hour on a 3-year contract extension. There's a provision in the first agreement, which lasted 12 months, that provided the opportunity for us to extend the agreement for whatever term mutually agreed. I don't recall if it was a 3-year maximum. 3 years, okay. Well, anyway, they gave us price quotes that covered 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year, and I don't know if you have it right in front of you, council. In any event, the bizarre thing was that, at least to me, was that the longer term contract had the cheaper rate, but the shorter term, I think you're only guessing for a shorter period of time. Those were the higher rates. The board passed a resolution that authorized me to enter into an agreement with Constellation Energy for 3 years at that 7.19 cents, or whatever the market, if it was lower, fluctuated down to. That was Thursday night, Friday, or Monday, for example, that I could enter into that contract, extending the old agreement. The old agreement had a provision in it called a price protection agreement.
Price guarantee.
Price guarantee. Council, you want to take over, please?
Yes, the original agreement with Constellation had, as the mayor said, a price guarantee that if the price quoted and charged by Constellation Energy was to exceed the price in which Commonwealth Edison is charging, that people could, the village could terminate the contract, and people could also opt out of buying their energy from Constellation without penalty. And that was, there were actually 2 sections, section 5.13 and 3.5 of the original agreement that provided for that right to terminate without penalty when the price for Constellation's power exceeded the price for Constellation's. When we tendered to Constellation the extension agreement for 36 months, which extended the original agreement, and the only thing it added was some language that the Illinois Commerce Commission has issued new, or about to issue new rules that would be in effect during this 36-month period for notice to consumers, et cetera. That language was added just to bring it up to current law. And Constellation declined to sign the agreement. They indicated that they would not sign, and they're willing to sign an extension if it has the price guarantee agreement. And part of the reason was back at that time, the Commonwealth Edison price for electricity was in around 6 cents per kilowatt hour, and Constellation was quoting at 7.19. Well, if anyone's either watched the news the last few days or read the newspaper, you know that Commonwealth Edison has now come out with their new rate, and it's gone up by 38%, and their new rate is 7.596 per kilowatt hour, and that will take effect in June for those people who are on Commonwealth Edison. At any rate, since the village trustees were clear that they wanted the price guarantee language to be part of the agreement, we did not extend, Constellation would agree, we did not extend the contract 36 months Rather, what we did is, rather than people all being in mass pushed back to Commonwealth Edison, we negotiated a 1-month extension at 5.85 cents per kilowatt hour. That takes us up through the next few weeks of this month. And